Hello, and welcome to another LNG Industry Spotlight. I'm Sarah Smith, Assistant Editor of LNG Industry. I'm joined today by Danny Constantinis, Executive Chairman and CEO of EM&I Group. We're here to talk about Danny's article that featured in the August 2022 issue of LNG Industry entitled Fixing the Cracks. The article outlines the integrity challenges of cryogenic storage, showing how overcoming these barriers will be integral for the LNG industry while supporting Europe in the transition to renewables. You can read the article now by logging onto your account over at our website, lngindustry.com, and we'll also include a link to download the article at the bottom of this video. So welcome, Danny. Thank you for joining us today. Really looking forward to unpacking this article further. So to start us off, please could you introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us a little bit more about your role at EM&I Group?
Well, thank you, Sarah, and a good day to everybody. My name's Danny Constantinis, and I'm the Executive Chairman and CEO of the EM&I Group.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Danny. So let's dive straight into your article. At the beginning, you mentioned that the LNG market is changing rapidly as a result of the invasion of Ukraine and sanctions on Russian oil and gas. What is the likely effect of this on the LNG market, particularly in Europe?
Well, the LNG market is changing rapidly anyway, and even more so as a result of the invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions on Russian gas. The effect of this on gas in Europe is huge. We have to replace very large quantities of gas by other means.
And following on from this, how long do you think it will take for Europe to become independent of this Russian oil and gas?
Well, the politicians would like to think that we could become independent of Russian gas in a short space of time, maybe a year or so. I think that's a little bit ambitious, but I would say that the industry, particularly if we start using the latest technologies of FSRUs and FLNGs, we should be able to replace a lot of our dependency on Russian gas, maybe in the space of 2 or 3 years.
Your article also covers FSRUs, FLNGs, and LNG carriers. With more of these floating facilities expected in the Mediterranean, how will they be serviced?
Certainly, there'll be a large increase in the number of FSRUs, FLNGs, and LNG carriers worldwide. But I think especially in the Mediterranean, where the northern Mediterranean would be a very good position to start feeding gas into the European networks. The question of how they'll be serviced is an interesting one. Principally because LNG carriers, people are quite used to taking those into dry dock. On the other hand, FSRUs and FLNGs, once installed, are very unlikely to be moved to dry docks, as we've experienced with the FPSO industry, and consequently, they have to be serviced on station. And that takes quite a different approach to dry docking, but it's perfectly possible to be able to service and maintain these assets in situ.
Right. And leading on from that, what are the main challenges in servicing these vessels?
Well, the main challenges are can be broken down into several parts. Certainly, there's the logistics element, because if you have to service vessels on station, you can't do that with lots of people because there's a limit to the number of people that can be accommodated on board. So that's one of the challenges, and getting equipment to and fro is difficult. It has to be flown in by helicopter or by supply boat. Apart from the logistic challenges, there's the cultural challenges of the operators getting used to this new way of working and being prepared to service and maintain these vessels on station whilst they're operating. You can't switch these off easily because of the consequent effect it has on the gas supply into the European networks.
So would you be able to expand a bit more on what integrity challenges are likely to be faced with such vessels?
From the point of view of integrity, the challenges are probably, some of the challenges indeed are ones that we're quite used to from the FPSO world, and we're we're quite capable of bringing that technology over. For example, mooring systems, the hull itself, topsides piping, EX equipment, all that kind of stuff we are quite used to doing, and we can transfer that knowledge. However, a real integrity challenge is the cargo containment, especially of the membrane type. Now, these membranes are highly efficient, but they're also pretty delicate. So we will need to be able to inspect these without damaging them, dropped objects, that kind of stuff. We need to be able to inspect them without using scaffolding and so forth. We need to be able to do this with remote technology, things like high performance cameras, laser scanners, UAVs, in order to make sure that these linings are not damaged, they're not leaking, and they're not bent, they're not deflected, and that has to happen in a relatively short space of time. What I mean by that is if you have 5 or 6 tanks, then to take one tank out of service, there's a challenge to make sure that you can continue to supply as promised. And that means that the inspections and any remedial work have to take place in a very short space of time. So that's another challenge that has to be overcome.
And where should such services be centralized in the Mediterranean region?
Well, the question of where the services should be provided is an interesting one. You could take the point of view that the service could be provided at a local level, in other words, wherever the FSRU or FLNG happens to be located. Mostly FSRUs because there are not that many FLNGs yet in the Mediterranean, although they will increase in number. So concentrating on FSRUs for the moment, you could have these services provided at a local level. However, when you come to the high technology services, which, as I said earlier, is the main challenge, the problem is that this requires specialized equipment, specialized training, competent people, and so on. And it's probably more efficient, both from a logistics point of view and from a commercial point of view, in other words, from a cost point of view, to have those services centralized in 1 or 2 specific locations and then moved from wherever they are to where each of the assets is actually situated. Now, it could also be argued that where indeed would you want to place such a centralized location? In our view, and what we've done is we've moved our operations for this type of work to Malta to cover Europe and Africa, as a matter of fact. And we did that also for the FPSO world. You may ask, why Malta? Well, Malta is a very centralized location in the Mediterranean. It's very well serviced in terms of skill sets of people available. The government is certainly business friendly and very supportive of this type of initiative. We have good banking facilities, and we also have very good transportation. In other words, from Malta, you can get to anywhere in Europe extremely quickly. It has a good harbor, good ports, so that moving things by supply boat is also very straightforward. So we chose Malta for that region, and we still stand by that decision. We've been here now pretty well 7 years, and we found that it's met all of our expectations.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for your insight on that. Moving on, EM&I has a long reputation as an innovator and for working within the industry JIPs such as HITs, flow wind, and flow gas. What are the benefits of working with JIPs and what practical outcomes have you seen?
EM&I has got a long reputation as an innovator and working with industry JIPs, particularly things like HITs, flow wind, and flow gas, as you've mentioned. Well, the benefits of working with JIPs for us are very clear and very well proven. For example, to get a group of people together that represent all facets of the industry is highly beneficial. So, for example, with HITS has representation from the regulators, the class societies, the operators, academic institutions, and the service companies. So to get them into one room and to agree on common challenges for the industry is vital, and it's certainly proven to deliver big benefits. For example, with HITS, they came up with three challenges. The first was divers. Using divers on offshore installations has proven to be a dangerous occupation and an expensive one, and takes up a lot of bed spaces. So the industry wanted to find alternative solutions to that. The second challenge was moving people into confined spaces for inspection purposes. And again, that was something that the industry wanted to find alternatives to. And finally, the cleaning of tanks for inspection purposes. Partly the environmental impact, it's always dangerous and awkward to be moving hydrocarbon residues around, and they wanted to avoid that. So all of those three challenges were agreed, and we're well on the way to solving. Well, certainly the first one has been solved from an industry point of view, and we're well into solving the second and the third. Now, the flow wind JIP and the flow gas JIPs are much younger. But the flow gas JIP has already shown great benefits. For example, it's the flow gas JIP that identified that one of the risky areas was in fact the membrane tanks. And we've worked with that JIP to find solutions. Those solutions include using remote high performance cameras and remotely operated laser scanners and potentially specialized UAVs, drones. Now, already the work that has been carried out with this new technology for flow gas has shown that the technology at an experimental level is working very well onshore. So the next stage is to take it onto a real asset and test it in situ. And this is already scheduled for September of this year on an FSRU whilst it is in a dry dock. So that's an exciting thing for us to be looking forward to. And we expect to have the results of that probably by the end of September or maybe October, which we will share with the industry.
So your article also includes a section on inspection without entry. I think you kind of touched on that slightly. What are the main advantages of robotic and remote methods of inspection?
Well, the advantages of robotic and remote methods of inspection are fairly straightforward. They're safer, they're faster, and they're more economic. Safer because you're not putting people in dangerous situations such as confined spaces or working at height or working underwater. And because the tasks they have to perform generally are rather routine, humans don't like routine work. They find it difficult to do reliably. A robot has no problems in doing the same thing time and again. And that means that the humans who design, control, maintain, and all of that sort of stuff, the robots who manage the data, need to be trained to do that. So I don't see a world where all of the work that we do is carried out by robots with no human intervention. Far from it. What I do see is that the people that we need will have to develop these new skills and take advantage of the benefits of robots and remote methods of working without any of the disadvantages. Well, let's talk about the disadvantages a little bit. Robots are quite difficult to design, develop, maintain, and so forth. Big investment in doing that. But probably equally importantly is the fact that you need to get approval for this new technology, and our industry is very conservative. Correctly so. We have to be careful that what we do is safe and better than what we did before. So it takes time. And typically we're seeing somewhere between 5 and 7 years from when a technology is brought into the industry and validated before it's widely accepted. But then, of course, there's a trigger point, and once it's starting to be accepted, acceptance then moves very quickly, and we have to be ready to, as an industry, to react to that. So it takes some consideration, and it takes a lot of support from governments and regulators, and of course the industry in general.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And finally, can you tell us what experience does EM&I have in providing IRM services for offshore assets?
We've been in business for pretty well 40 years now, and in that time, we've provided this type of innovative service for everything from fixed installations in the North Sea in the early days through to onshore plant, gas plants and so forth, to the marine industry, and now into floating production and floating gas. It's been an exciting journey and a very rewarding one from the point of view of intellectual challenge and general interest as engineers. We thrive on those kind of challenges. Where are we going to go from here? Well, for sure, the LNG market and the floating LNG market in particular is extremely exciting, full of opportunities, and we want to become good at that. And of course, that's going to lead into other things. For me, gas is the bridge between hydrocarbons and renewables, and it'll be that bridge for quite a long time. But we're already looking at the renewable assets, particularly offshore floating wind, and dipping our toes in the water, if you don't mind me, that's a rather strange analogy, but dipping our toes in the water for things like hydrogen, which will be a consequence of all of these changes. And if we do get hydrogen working properly, that's going to be a huge benefit to the world, not just in providing energy, but in providing really clean energy. And that's also very exciting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for taking the time to explore your article in greater detail with us, Danny.
Thank you, Sarah.
A quick reminder that you can revisit this article now by signing onto your account over at our website, lngindustry.com, or by clicking on the link at the bottom of this video. We'd also like to offer all our viewers a free trial subscription to LNG Industry. Simply head over to our website, click on the magazine tab at the top of the screen, and follow the on-screen instructions to register for free. Thank you so much for watching.